Hello, Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Camp, President and CEO of the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce, here with our Cinco de Mayo, May 5th weekly legislative update. It's also the last weekly legislative update that we will do for this session due to the fact that the legislature adjourned right around 12:30 on Thursday, Senate first, followed by the House half an hour later, about 12:30 on Thursday. They could have probably adjourned on Wednesday, but the governor wanted to keep them there until Thursday because obviously they have the property tax bill signing yesterday afternoon. With regards to some big pieces that passed this week, obviously that allowed them to adjourn, first is the most obvious. The 11 appropriations bills were able to get over the hump. Some of the biggest ones that obviously can draw out sometimes are the RIF budget, just because the array of things that are in there. Also the standings bill, because that's what they often refer to as the Christmas tree bill, where you see a lot of different priorities and things like that try to get added at the very end of session. But those all got passed, obviously, and agreed upon by both chambers. Head into the governor. She'll have about a month to be able to decide if she's going to veto, line item veto, or sign them into legislation. But another big piece that passed this week, obviously, as you're all aware, is property tax. It got through in about less than 24 hours, about 22 hours. So they used the House bill as a vehicle. Senate passed it, brought it over to the House, then they passed it. And there was a lot of different pieces within it. There's about a 75-page bill, and it got passed in 22 hours. And then signed into law yesterday by the governor. But there's a couple things that are worth noting. As I mentioned, it was largely an agreement between Majority Leader Whitfer and Speaker Grassley at the very end. Senator Dawson, obviously being the Ways and Means Chair, played a key role in that. Brent obviously is also on the House Ways and Means Committee, so he had quite a say also in how that got done. But it passed, like I said, it passed through both chambers in less than 22 hours and was signed into a law yesterday. A few key provisions. There are two abatement sections that will affect apartment complexes that are built in communities. The abatement for housing and agreements for commercial development, that's really what the two sections were. One was just the overall commercial development piece. You have to have a written agreement that you'll enter into if you're going to use any abatement for commercial development. And then there was also the housing provision that I referenced before that could have serious implications for large scale multifamily commercial development. And one of the things we have heard is that there actually might be some large deals that might have to kind of wait a little bit just to see how this could have potential implications if they haven't already entered into an agreement, obviously, with regards to how that'll look. And obviously they'll need advice from bond counsels, tax accountants, things along those lines, those experts that can really look through what implications that will have for them. But that's something we're watching closely and taking into account as well. There was also a homestead tax credit of up to $6,500 for those over 65 to really help them, lower their property tax burden as they get onto government assistance and retire and things like that. And then there's also a military exemption up to $4,000 that the state passed and then also put back. They removed the state funding it. So obviously those two things will fall back on local governments as well. There were some pieces, obviously, with as far as growth, it was really said, if cities grow by less than 3%, you will not have a shift in your taxable valuation number. But then if it's between 3 to 6%, it will go to 2. And if it's above 6, it will go to 3. And again, that's on taxable value. So not direct revenue, taxable value is where that'll factor into the property tax system. As you can see, there's a lot of implications. In addition, there was also the removal of the PEARL levy, which is for outdoor recreation space, outdoor learning, and playgrounds, things along those lines for school districts. Obviously, also it had some say on the county's growth as well with their 350 and 395 county levy per thousand, that is. So that's something that we also are watching, and we'll really have to wait and see all the implications this will have. Because obviously, being that it passed in 22 hours, there's some things that we're going to have to work through and make sure that we get that information to our applicable local partners and local taxing entities, because that's going to be very important moving forward. It will also be a discussion in next legislative session, that being property tax as well. So that's something that we'll have to watch closely and discuss in the offsite season, which I will talk about a little bit more as well. Another big piece that also passed this week is the youth employment bill. The House made some changes to it, increased the age to 14 to 16, and also changed who would make and grant the approvals for which jobs would be able to be impacted by it rather than workforce development. It'll be remain how it is currently done. So that's something that some folks alleviated some folks' concerns with the bill. So that did move forward, but we know that that will assist and help folks to find hopefully some additional employees in the retail sector, in the restaurant sector, in the hospitality, hotel, and convention space. They're desperate for employees, and we hope that this will help get them a new pipeline of employees to help meet their needs and help our communities, obviously, in those areas. Another bill that I've obviously talked about, and we and our partner organizations have talked about throughout session, is the mega site bill. Very much applicable to us because of Mills Crossing immediately south of us in Mills County, 1,300 acre mega site that Mid-Am and Mills County worked very, very hard to get certified here recently. But on that note, the governor had not really weighed in much throughout session on that bill. She decided to come out and weigh in earlier this week. So it moved back up onto the priority list, passed the Senate. It got over to the House. There was a pretty contentious caucus, is my understanding, and they did not bring it forward, and then they did not really talk about it after that fact either, after that caucus took place. So what we hope to do is in the off season, work on some fixes for it and then bring it back next session, obviously, because it'll still be a live round, being that this was the first of 2 sessions in the General Assembly. So looking back on the legislative session, a few successes that we're going to kind of hang our hat on for this year is early on the medical malpractice. That was a big piece for us, especially as a border community, to make sure that we got those non-economic damage protections similar to what Nebraska has. We had advocated for $1 million, but to get it through the legislature, it had to be up to $2 million. But I know our hospitals and healthcare providers and other applicable entities are very thankful for that getting over the hump. We also had commercial trucker liability reform. That originally was at about $2 million, ended up passing at $5 million, but we've already heard from several of our local companies who are in that space, transportation logistics, who have taken note of it, said how happy they are to see that and how big of a deal that is. Obviously, transportation logistics is a big target industry of ours here in Council Bluffs at the crux of 80 and 29. So that's something we were advocated for, obviously, as well as some of our partners in Des Moines with Ruan, CRST, and Cedar Rapids, things along those lines. So that's something we were happy to see get over the finish line as well. On the opposite end, looking ahead to next year, some of our key pieces are going to be refining MEGA and hopefully getting that over the hump in the House, especially with the speaker next session. And then also kind of gearing up and figuring out, okay, you've made these changes to property tax this session. What are your thoughts next session? We heard repeatedly from Senator Dawson that we needed to be looking at revenue diversification ideas away from property tax for local governments and local taxing entities. So hopefully providing some solutions on that front and having some say into what that looks like, because Senator Dawson obviously has a lot of say into how that is going to be done. But then also port authorities and land development trusts, those kind of got lost in the shuffle, just the way the session went. Some of these policy bills just got washed away throughout session. Those are 2 right there that kind of just never had a chance just because of the way the session went this year. But we plan to bring them back up next session and hope to have a little bit more success in that front next year. Obviously, as I noted, this is our last legislative update for the legislative session because it's adjourned, obviously. So we will not do one of these until next session when they kick off the 2024 session in early January. But obviously, in the interim, we'll be having a lot of conversations with our local partners with regards to how we need to be looking at some of those key priorities moving forward. Our state entities, Iowa Chamber Alliance, Professional Developers of Iowa, we'll be having a lot of conversations about what do we need to do to jointly move things forward into next session and kind of build a consensus around these key issues and just make sure we're being the best resource at the state level and for our local communities and governments. So with that, I will just end by saying thank you so much for entrusting the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce for your advocacy needs. We thoroughly enjoy being staunch advocates for the Council Bluffs, Pottawatomie County, and Southwest Iowa community. We will continue to do that. That is a pillar of our organization. You can always count on us for that. If you ever have questions, always reach out to me. I'm always an open book, and I love having conversations about those issues that you guys are seeing in your respective businesses that can have a positive impact or trying to stop something that could have a negative impact on our community as well. So always just know, give me a call if you ever have any questions or want to chat on the advocacy front or just how we can better advocate for our region. And also, as I always do every week, I just want to thank you for entrusting your support and your advocacy and just being the voice of business for Southwest Iowa to the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce. The team and I do not take that lightly, and we really, really consider it an honor to be able to speak for our region in that regard and in that capacity. So thank you so much. We will always be here for you if you ever need anything. Just feel free to reach out and call us, and we look forward to working in the outside of session to make sure that we have as much success in the 2024 session as possible. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice rest of the day.